So, in the last series that I did entitled Life Kills Atheism, I talked about how it is way more logical to believe that abiogenesis, chemicals to life, could not happen without a creator, right? So, when you look at the amazing machinery and the code and the quality control inside all living organisms and the most simple forms of life, and you ask yourself, could this come about? Could this come into existence without any intelligence involved? Or did there have to be some intelligence involved? And I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll be like, yeah, there's definitely intelligence behind that. Well, in this video, we're going to attack the idea of a common ancestor without a creator. In other words, we've already shown through the 7 things of that last series that life could not arise without a creator. Well, now we're going to ask the question, could single-celled organisms become more complex organisms without intelligence involved? And so single-celled organisms look something like this. This is a prokaryotic cell. Well, multicellular organisms look like this or this, depending on what they are, if it's a plant or an animal or fungus. And so there's a lot of differences between these two cells, and I'm going to focus on one big difference. Now, if you investigate molecular machines inside living cells, you will quickly find out about kinesin and microtubules. Kinesin is a motor protein that carries things inside the cell. And microtubules are these amazing rails for them to walk on, and they don't stay put. They break apart and they come together as needed. And then, of course, you've got the kinesin, the motor protein that walks on that carries cargo. Now, I hope you will agree with me that this is definite evidence for intelligence, that this would not come into existence without any intelligence involved, because what we have is things with purpose. The microtubule has purpose, and it's not in prokaryotic cells. The kinesin, the motor protein, has purpose. It has to go in the right direction, and it's not in prokaryotic cells. And then the cargo attaching to it was definitely done on purpose, and of course it's also involved in the division and multiplication of eukaryotic cells. So, I hope you will agree with me that this could not come into existence without a creator. So here's our options. Either the creator who created life created a variety of organisms, or that creator was involved in the common ancestor evolution, right? Because evolution's not a bad word. Evolution's a great word. It just means changes over time. And so it's sad that creationism has been placed in opposition to evolution. That's not true. I believe in evolution, but I do not believe in a common ancestor. I do not believe the science is there. I do not believe a prokaryotic cell can become a eukaryotic cell without a creator, without intelligence involved. And I don't think that he was involved in the evolution of it. I think they were created separately. Of course, I do believe in genetic mutations that are beneficial, but I do not believe that they can produce the variety of organisms that you see. In other words, it's very limited. I recommend you study Michael Behe on this, and he talks about, in his latest book, I believe it is, the limits to evolution. And then there's also these great videos about whale evolution from Long Story Short. But let's focus again on these. So here are a couple videos, just so that you can greatly grasp and hear it from scientific sources what microtubules are and motor proteins.
This visualization isolates a single chromosome at mitosis. The chromosome contains 2 identical copies of DNA. Each DNA molecule is packaged up into one of the sausage-shaped chromatids. Sticking out from either side are microtubule fibers from the mitotic spindle, used for orienting and guiding the chromosomes to their correct positions. The red region is the kinetochore, which works as the interface between the microtubules and the chromosome. The kinetochore is one of the largest and most complex molecular mechanisms inside living cells, with multiple functions to perform. The kinetochore is central to the movement of the chromosomes and is able to hang on to the dynamic ends of the microtubules. It is also a mechanical tension sensing system, which is able to feel if everything is correctly attached and positioned. It is also a stop signal broadcasting system, sending out chemical signals to the rest of the cell about whether it is ready to undergo separation of the chromosomes. This kinetochore has sensed that the tension is just right and the chromosome is correctly positioned and attached. The last little bit remaining red is the stop signal broadcasting system. It is carried away by a dynein motor, walking down the microtubule away from the kinetochore. These are molecular motors involved with a directed transport along the mitotic spindle. The orange proteins walking to the left are kinesins, molecular motors carrying proteins on their back. Striding from the kinetochore on long molecular legs are dynein, carrying the stop signal broadcasting system. When all the kinetochores are ready, the cell transitions into the anaphase stage, with the chromatids pulled apart to the opposite poles of the cell. The cytoskeleton is a dynamic network of filamentous proteins that extends throughout the cytoplasm, forming the struts, cables, and girders that give the cell its shape, internal organization, and mechanical support for movement. There are several types of protein filament, each built from subunits that rapidly come together or break apart, allowing these elaborate structures to be assembled and dismantled wherever they're required by the cell. Microtubules are stiff, hollow tubes that anchor other organelles and serve as tracks that guide the movement of vesicles and other cell components.
Now you might be saying, why isn't every scientist screaming at the top of their lungs, hey, a common ancestor could not happen, could not be a truth? There's not evidence for a common ancestor without intelligence involved, because this amazing machinery and coordination and orchestra. I mean, just look at an orchestra. An orchestra doesn't come about by chance. You've got to have someone orchestrating it. And what we see with motor proteins and microtubules is something that is clearly orchestrated by intelligence. So you might be asking yourself, why don't they say this? Well, I think it's because they believed Darwinism when Darwinism didn't have all the facts. Now, of course, none of us have all the facts, but the problem is that when more facts come into existence, when there's better science, better equipment, better microscopes, people have a choice. If the new data, the new science, the new evidence is contradictory to what they have been believing for a while, are they going to change their mind? Are they going to admit that the assumptions they had were wrong? Sometimes no, and that's the thing with Darwinian evolution. That's the thing with the idea of a common ancestor, is that for so long, before these things were discovered, like I'm pretty sure motor proteins were not discovered until 1984. That's actually the year I was born, and I'm 36 years old, so that's pretty cool that one of my favorite biological molecular machines was discovered the year I was born. But that's a long time since Darwin that people had this idea. They had these built-in assumptions, and it's very hard for people to change their mind, especially if they've done so much work based on wrong assumptions. And they have done so much work. And so, I recommend you listen to Brett Weinstein. I think I said his name right. But he found out that lab mice were not good for being tested, because lab mice, from being bred over and over to be lab mice, they evolved, and they had longer telomeres. I don't even know if I said that right, but check out this video where he talks about that, and he says that when he tried to tell the scientific community that they had issue with it. They didn't want to change the way they did things. They didn't want to admit that they were wrong, because so much of many scientists' work were done with the assumption that lab mice were like regular mice, and that breeding them to be lab mice did not change anything about them. And he showed that assumption was wrong. And so you need to understand that experts, scientists, are humans. They have a hard time admitting they are wrong, especially when there's peer pressure and there is long-held assumptions. Darwinian evolution is a long-held assumption among scientists. There's peer pressure to accept Darwinian evolution and the idea of a common ancestor. But I hope you'll agree with me just from observation. Look at these scientifically accurate animations. This is going on inside every living cell of your body. And this could not come about by natural processes over time. So either we have a common creator that created a variety of organisms with the ability to adapt to their surroundings. Study epigenetics. It's amazing that God has given organisms a lot of different genetic code that they can pull from. And based on their environment, some genes will be silenced and some genes will be expressed. And then there's also genetic mutations, but it doesn't happen fast enough, and it's very limited to what it can produce. So I hope you'll agree with me, just from these simple observations, that what the Bible says is very logical about creation. Now, I am a young earth creationist. I think the evidence is pointing toward a common creator that created the universe not that long ago. Thousands of years, not billions of years. Why do I believe this? Well, the evidence seems to keep pointing to the Bible. So when I can believe the Bible on some things, well, that gives me evidence I can believe it on other things. And the Bible clearly states, if you take it if you just read it plainly, it says that God made things with age, right? He made Adam and Eve as adults. So the day after they were created, of course they were created on different moments, because he created man first, and we'll get into that later when we talk about marriage and why I think that's evidence for Christianity. But if the day after one of them was created and they look like an adult, well, that's clearly they were created with age. And of course, it's not hard to believe that the one who could just quickly speak the stars into existence could also speak their light extended to the earth, billions of light years. So, I hope you'll agree with me that because of motor proteins and microtubules, and I think as scientists discover more about eukaryotic cells, you might also want to look into what people say are the issues with symbiogenesis. I hope you'll see that an infinite amount of time would never turn a prokaryotic cell into a eukaryotic cell, because there are things inside eukaryotic cells that could only come into existence from intelligence. Unintelligence would never create them. So I hope you'll agree with me that man, the evidence is pointing to a common creator. May you reconsider Jesus.